everyone, I'm glad to be back, and in case you are new, my name is Clara and you have entered in the Ink Path, which is the channel, the literary kind of channel, the bookish channel that I direct, and I post videos every week. And today I'm going to do a special about Jane Eyre. So if you haven't read any any adaptation or the book, the classic, which is the one that I'm going to analyze here, I recommend you to close this, read the book, and then come back and see me, because I don't want to spoil you the fun of reading one of my favorite books. Ready? You decide to stay? Okay, let's go into work. So, in the previous video about Jane Eyre, in Meeting Jane Eyre Part 1, we discussed feminism in Jane Eyre and the importance of personal relationships. But today we are going to talk about the roots of Jane Eyre and how Thornfield Hall, which is the main house in the story, Rochester Manor, to say it at least, we're going to talk about how Thornfield Hall was built. So what does this mean? Originally, I was planning on doing an extensive kind of argument about how other stories influenced Charlotte Bronte's famous book, how she dealt with that. But then I thought, why don't we dig a little bit more on the elements of Jane Eyre? So this route is better in a way because we can analyze more elements of the story, watching parts of the story. So originally, when I read it in my mother tongue, in Spanish, I never thought about Jane Eyre as a Gothic novel, but later on I studied in my one of my courses back in the uni, and then I realized that even though it's very subtle, there are elements of Gothic literature in it. So my studies are not English literature, but I had to study universal literature in journalism, in media, so I had a little bit of notion about how Gothic novels deal. Why is Jane Eyre a Gothic novel? So let's rewind. Jane Eyre is the story of a kind of young orphan woman who goes from a house that she's not loved, Gateshead, to a school for poor girls when she's a child, and then she moves to Thornfield Hall as a governess for a little girl, and then the love story starts from there onwards. So watching and rereading in English the story, the book itself, and watching the movies, I realized that there are Gothic elements in it, like, I don't know, for example, a solitary girl in solitary places. Jane actually lives a very solitary life in Gateshead, where she's ignored and very bad treated by her relatives. And also when she goes to Lowood, she goes to this kind of dark, gloomy, cold place where there's only illness and danger. So you have this kind of almost crumbling building where she has to live and survive. And then she goes to Thornfield, which is a very big manor in a kind of solitary place in the middle of nowhere that actually has a lot of staircases and a lot of gloomy rooms that are not used. But also, it's not only the environment. You have this kind of element of the ghost and the fairies, and it's an element that is very present throughout the whole novel, because if you go back to the book, actually Rochester compares Jane to a fae, a fairy, and she is always referred by him as one of the fairy folks, like one of these mythical kind of dark, twisted creatures. And also Jane faces the idea of ghosts, as uh, as a child when she's actually grounded in the red room where her uncle died long ago, and it's supposed to be said, or it's supposed to be known in the story, that that room is actually haunted by Uncle's Reed ghost, and she actually has a really bad experience in the room because she has the feeling of being attacked and watched by this evil spirit, even though her uncle wasn't evil at all. There's also elements of ghostly figures in 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 Thornfield Hall in Rochester House when Jane doesn't know how to how to deal with certain noises and certain laughs that she hears in the middle of the night where everyone is supposed to be sleeping. Later on, of course, you know that it's Bertha Mason, the one that is doing that. Bertha is actually the first Rochester's wife, actually, and she when she starts having an affair with Rochester, she doesn't know about her at all. But when Jane is going to marry Rochester, it's when everything is discovered. And it's really interesting to talk about Rochester as a character because other element of Gothic novels is having a male figure who is a kind of a strong, aggressive, violent person. So it's really interesting to see Rochester as that because it's actually that. Rochester is considered not handsome, so you can call him ugly, but he's very violent. Violent in the sense that he lives life to the fullest, and he doesn't care about the moral compass at all, of the kind of etiquette of the period of time. So you have this passionate character who lives in the like borderline of society rules. Environments are important because Jane lives in different areas where she has to match different counterparts. For instance, uh, Thornfield Hall estate or Thornfield Hall grounds are at the beginning of the story are dark and cold, but as she grows fond of the house and of the owner of the house itself changes to be a more warm, homey kind of place. But also, once she discovers Bertha, she finds the house itself very suffocating, so she has to run away. So the element of the environment, apart from being, for instance, a clue to a Gothic novel per se, which is the one that we're facing, or partially the one that we are actually talking about, is a signal to Jane's period of time in her life. In addition, I discovered doing research for this video and also doing my reading, I discovered that Jane Eyre has also roots of original fairy tales such as Cinderella and Bluebeard, for example. So our Jane Eyre is actually a 19th century version of Cinderella. She is the not loved relative in a wealthy family where her only support was her uncle, and he died when she was a baby, so she had to live with this aunt of her own and these relatives, these cousins that she basically despised because they are very violent towards her, and she has to go to a different place, a school where she's not better treated either. So when she has this idea with one of her professors, the only one who actually cared for her, she talks to this professor of hers while she's already a teacher herself, and this teacher tells her to if she wants to know more, if she wants to challenge herself, she should actually advise herself as a teacher, as a governess who is seeking for work. So she has this figure in the school, even though she is mistreated there. She has this figure in this teacher in particular of the fairy godmother who actually guides her to a different area, a different period of her time. So through the idea of having an advertisement, she gets to go to Thornfield and teach little Adele, who is actually her pupil. So Thornfield, even though it's dark and gloomy, is actually the kind of castle where she goes as Cinderella went to the ball. She goes there to teach and finds herself her own prince that actually is not what it seems. So instead of losing a slipper, a glass slipper, she runs away because she doesn't want to live as Rochester's lover. So we have covered the Cinderella part in Jane Eyre, but Jane Eyre has also roots related to another fairy tale called Bluebeard. In this story, Bluebeard wants to marry a young lady who is actually his neighbor's daughters. So when they marry, because this young woman thinks that even though he's ugly, he's rich, so it's important to be married to a rich man. When they marry, Bluebeard tells to his wife, like, okay, these are all the keys in this house, to all the rooms, so you are only forbidden to enter in one room in particular. However, I'm going to give you the keys because I have to go on a trip and I trust you. Originally, the wife wants to follow the instructions, but however, she feels very curious about what is inside this forbidden room, and she decides to enter because he's never going to find out. He is not in the house. So when she enters in this room, she finds that the room is full of corsets, like actually full of dead women who were her previous wives. Because of the shock, the wife lets the keys drop to the floor. The keys end up being covered in blood because the room is full of blood and dead women. So when Bluebeard returns home, he finds out about his wife, like mischief, to call it in a lesser way, because of the marks of blood that the keys have. Instead of running away, the woman, the current wife of Bluebeard, faces death. However, another character comes to the rescue and saves her and frees her. In Jane Eyre, Bluebeard's story is based or is noticeable when it comes to Bertha, because Rochester is this kind of passionate man who keeps Jane in the dark about his past, about his actual marital or civil state. So this Bluebeard feeling we discovered when we know about Rochester's actual wife, Bertha, who is hidden in the attics. So when there's a simile with Bluebeard's story and Jane Eyre, when Jane is forced to see this kind of mad person. So she is the wife of Bluebeard in this case, where Rochester becomes Bluebeard because he's keeping her in the dark. He's keeping a secret from her. But instead of facing actual death as in the original fairy tale, Jane decides to flee, to run away, and live a different life, even though she later on goes back to Rochester because different reasons, because she listens to his voice and feels that something wrong, and she's still in love with Rochester. Quite a tale, alright? Another element I wanted to discuss here is the actual house. Thornfield Hall, Rochester House, which is the most iconic house in the whole novel, is actually very present because it's treated as such another character where you can walk through his long corridors, and it's this kind of gloomy, dark place where everything could happen, where reality and fantasy are intertwined. But however, it's very important because doing research for this video, I discovered that it was actually based on a real house. According to The Guardian, in an article I will leave in the actual information box down below, and this house on Freehold was based on an actual kind of late medieval house, which is called, if I'm not mistaken, Norton Conveys. If I am pronouncing it correctly, probably not. So this house was visited by Charlotte Bronte in 1839, if I'm not mistaken, and while she was staying there, there were rumors about a woman who lived in the attic of the house, in the attics of this kind of big manor, which is actually from the late medieval period, but also has Stuart elements to it and also Gregorian elements in it. So this tale of a mad woman living in the attic was important enough for Charlotte as to mention it in the story, and also as to try to mimic the house structure for Thornfield. And it's really interesting how in 2004, according to their website, because you can actually visit the house, it's kind of a museum kind of house, so you can visit the house and the gardens. I leave the website down below if you want to watch it. According to the website of this house, of this Norton Conveys manor, in 2004 they discovered a passage through a staircase that led to the attics. So it's supposed to be a true story, not a legend, even though it was all covered kind of in a legendary kind of mist. But apparently there are facts. There's a staircase, that through that staircase there's a kind of, I assume, not a staircase, I'm saying it wrong, there's a bookcase that actually leads to the attic, and these big attics where a person was supposed to be locked up originally. It's really interesting to find houses which inspired authors to create these kind of environmental settings where the action took place. I found it fascinating when you can actually see houses where things happened, or where authors took inspiration from. I found it really interesting. So at last, this is it. This is the ending of our special of the week, and I feel like I would love to hear your thoughts on the fairy tales I mentioned, on how gothic Jane Eyre you think it actually is. Do you find that Jane Eyre has more connections to other original stories or other fairy tale stories that I'm ignoring, or I'm forgetting? Could you tell me which literary houses would you love to visit, or if you know other stories that have important houses and that actually were based on real houses that you can visit. Maybe you can also extend that to TV shows as well. I love TV shows, so it would be great to know more about houses that were used in TV shows. But tell me more in the comment section down below. Of course, you can tell me if you like this video. You can click the thumb and give me a thumbs up, and you can comment everything you want. I would love to debate about Jane Eyre with you. Goodbye.